Welcome to the Bryant's Winter Book. Today we'll be reading this book through the rest of the year. I hope you all will enjoy and please subscribe.
Chapter 1.
This is part 1, which is fall, and we are reading chapter 1. Fall came on with a softness so that Brian didn't realize what was in store. A hard-spine Northwoods winter until it was nearly too late. He had never thought he would be here this long. After the plane crash that marrowed him in the wilderness, he had lived day by day for 54 days until he had found the survival pack in the plane. Then another 35 days through the northern summer, somehow living the same day-to-day pattern he started just after the crash. To be sure, he was very busy. The emergency pack on the plane had given him a gun with 50 shells, a survival .22 rifle, a hunting knife, and with a compass in the handle, cooking pots and pans, a fork, spoon, knife, matches, 2 Button lighters, a sleeping bag, and foam pad, a first aid kit with scissors, a cape that said Cessna, fishing line, lures, hooks, and sinkers, and several packets of freeze-dried food. He was ready to ration the food out, but found out it's impossible, and within 2 weeks had eaten it all. Even the package of dried prunes, and were so good he ate the whole pack. Dried prunes, something he hated in his old life. They tasted like candy and were so good he ate the whole package in one sitting. The results were nearly as bad as when he glued it on the gut cherries when he first landed. His stomach tied in a knot, and he spent more than an hour at his lettering hole. In truth, he felt relieved when the food was gone. It had softened him, made him want more and more, and he could tell that he was moving mentally away from the woods. His situation, he started to think in terms of the city again, of hamburgers and melts, and his dreams changed. In the days, weeks, and months since the plane had crashed, he had dreamed many times. At first, all the dreams had been of food he had eaten, food he wished he had eaten, and food he wanted to eat. But as time progressed, the food dreams seemed to phase out. He dreamed of other things, of friends, of his parents, always that they were back together, and more of girls. As with food, he dreamed of girls he knew, girls he wished he had known, and girls he wanted to know. But with the supplies from the plane, his dream changed back to food. And when it was gone, in what seemed a very short time, a kind of waiting hunger returned that he had torment, never satisfied, even with a fish that he'd never have. It somehow was never enough, and he seemed to be angry all the time. So angry that he wasted a whole day just slamming things around and swearing at his luck. When it finally ended, wore away, was more like it. He felt a great sense of relief. It was as if somebody he didn't like had been visiting and had finally gone. I can't speak today. It was then that he would first really noted the cold, and almost a whiff, something he could smell. It was a hunting with the rifle when he sensed the change. He had wakened early, just before first light, and had decided to spend the entire day hunting and getting maybe 2 or 3 fowl birds. He blew on the coals from the fire that night before they glowed red, added some bits of the dry grass, which burst into flames at once, and heated water in one of the aluminum pans and that had come in the plane survival pack. Coffee, he said, sipping the hot water. Not that I'd ever liked coffee, but having a hot liquid in the morning made the day easier to start. Giving him time to think, plan his morning as he sipped. The sun came up over the lake, and for the 100th time he noticed how beautiful it was. Mist rising, the new sunshine shining like gold. He banked the fire carefully with dirt to keep the coals hot for later, picked up the rifle and moved into the woods. He was instantly hunting. All sounds at any movement went into him, filled his eyes, ears, mind, so that he became part of it. And It was then that he noted the change. A coldness, a touch, a soft kiss on his cheek. It was the same air, the same sun, the same morning, but it was different, so changed that he stopped and raised his hand to his cheek and touched where the coldness had brushed him. Why is it different? He whispered. What smell? But it isn't a smell. So much as a feeling, a newness, the air, a chill, there and gone, a brush of new air on his cheek, and he should have known what it meant. But just then he saw a rabbit raise the little rifle, pulled the trigger, and hardly one click, he recocked the bolt, made certain there with a cartridge, in the chamber, and aimed again. The rabbit had remained sitting all this time and pulled the trigger once more. Click. He cleared the barrel and turned the rifle up to the dawn light. At first, he couldn't see anything different. He had come to know the rifle well. Although he still didn't like it much, the noise of the small gun seemed terribly out of place and scared game away. He had to admit it. Made the shooting of game easier or quicker. He had a limited number of shells and realized that would not last forever, but he still had come to depend on the rifle. Finally, as he pulled the bolt back to get the light down in the action, he saw it. The firing pin, a raised part of the bolt, was broken cleanly away. Worse, it could not be repaired without special tools, which he did not have. That made the rifle worthless, at least as far as being a gun was concerned, and he swore and started back to the camp to get his bow and arrows, and in the movement of things completely ignored the warning nature had put his cheek just before the tried to shoot the rabbit. In camp, he set the rifle aside. It might have some use later as a tool, and picked up the bow. He had come to depend too much on the rifle, and for a moment the bow and handful of arrows felt unfamiliar to his hands. Before he was away from the camp, he stood and shot several times into a dirt hammock. The first shot went wide by 2 feet, and he shook his head. Focus, he thought. He'd bring it back. On the second shot, he looked at the target, into the target, drew and held for half a second, focusing on the wow on the dirt hump. And when he released the arrow with a soft thrum, he almost didn't need to watch it fly into the center of the bump. He knew where the arrow would go, knew before he released it, almost before he drew it back. From my brain, he thought, from my brain though, my arm into my bow, and though the string to the arrow, it must be one. It is all one. 3 more times he shot the arrows, drove into the center of the hammock, and then he was satisfied. He left the camp again. He pulled the sleeve quiver made from his old windbreaker and his right shoulder, and walked slowly, watching, listening up until he saw the curve of the back of the rabbit near a small clump of hazel brush. It was too far for a shot, and he quickly averted his eyes and froze for a moment before moving closer. He learned much from the woods, from mistakes, and one thing he'd come to know was that game spooked if it felt that it was known. It was always better to look away, move sideways instead of looking directly toward it, and it worked. Now to the left, lifting the brush, cover his movement until he was no longer than 15 feet away from the rabbit. He drew the bow, aimed for the center of the rabbit, and released when he felt the arrow would fly right. It took the rabbit almost exactly in the center of its chest and drove through cleanly, killing it almost instantly. They were not all this clean, the kills, and he was grateful and had not grown accustomed to killing in spite of how much of it he had done. He had learned this. Nothing that lived, nothing that walked or crawled or flew or swam or slithered or oozed, nothing, not one thing on God's earth wanted to die. No matter what people thought or said about chickens or fish or cattle, they all wanted to live. But Brian had become part of nature, had become a predator, a two-legged wolf. And there was a physics to it, a basic fact, almost a law. For a wolf to live somewhere else, for something else had to die, and for Brian to live, it was the same. His body was a machine. It needed food, needed calories, and for that to happen, something had to die. But sometimes it did not go well. Sometimes the arrow did not hit a vital place, did not hit the heart or lungs, and the rabbit or grouse died more slowly. The first time this had happened, a kind of panic had taken him. He had shot a rabbit through the middle of the stomach, and he had tried to run and then had flopped around. He had shot the rabbit again and again, pouching arrows into the poor thing until it had at last died. And when he cooked it and eaten it, as hunger forced him to do. The rabbit had tasted like wood and made him so sick he nearly threw up. It was one thing he had liked about the rifle. It killed quickly, causing a kind of wound shock that stunned as it killed. But he was once more with the bow now, and the silence of it brought him back to being more a part of the woods, and he moved easily as he carried the dead rabbit back to camp. It was afternoon by the time he had the fire rekindled and had set the cleaning the rabbit must have changed since he had retrieved the survival pack from the plane. He had a hunting knife now, and that made cleaning game much easier and faster. He still wanted nothing. He used the knife to split the rabbit down the middle of the belly and skin it carefully and then gutted it. Used the carve of the knife to clean out the cavity, the heart and the lungs and intestines and stomach and liver. He sat aside for fish, bait, and food, as well as the heart. Then he cut the body up into pieces, carving it at the joints, and put them in a pot with fresh lake water. While he sat on the fire to boil. He had found it best to boil everything initially. He had cooked meat over the fire on a stick, something he had seen in movies and on television, but it was the wrong way to cook. The flame heated the meat and the juices, all the vitamins and nutrients stripped into the fire. Everything was wasted but by the boiling the meat, he had made a stew. When he drank the juice broth, he had not only had a rich soup, but something to sip as well. He leaned back against a rock wall next to his shelter, opening and taking a minute to think while the meat cooked. It amazed him how little time he had to do that, sit and think. It seemed the longer he was in the woods, he had marked 68 days counting this day, the more there was to do. Firewood was an endless chore, of course. He had kept the fire going whenever he was there and banked it when he left. And since he had burned all easy wood, the wood close to camp, it took longer to bring wood in, but that wasn't all of his life, and it seemed that everything he had to do doubled. He would get up, check his fishing lines, and remove any fish to store and his live fish pool along the shore. Then see the airing out the sleeping bag and tend to his toilet and hunt for the day meat and clean it. If he made a kill, he often did not, and cook it and stretch the hide. If it was a rabbit, to dry and eat and bank the fire for night, and another day was gone. Just stopping to sit and think was a weird thing. At first he didn't like it much because it brought back memories and made him homesick. Made him miss his mother and father, other life. But now he realized the time and he had spent this day did something he called visiting. He would pick somebody back in what he thought as the world. And he sat and had an imaginary chat with him or her. Usually it was his mother or father, sometimes a friend, or once or twice a movie or a rock star. Initially he worried that he might be going crazy, but then he decided if you felt you were crazy, you weren't really crazy. But he had heard somewhere that crazy people don't know they were insane. So he went ahead and had the visits. He sat now and visited with his mother by looking across the lake and letting his eyes go out of focus. He could visualize her face and hear her laugh, and he sit chatting in his mind with her, asking how she was doing, telling her of his life now. And before long, he was surprised to see that meat had cooked. Brian took the pot off the flame, the coal, and went down to check the fishing line. There was a small panfish on it. It had bluegills, and he had took it off the hook and put it on the holding pan with the others. If his only saved food, if It was his only saved food, the little pool of fish. No matter how small the fish, he kept them all. He learned that as well. Food was everything, just everything, and none of it, not even the smallest fish, could be let go. But when he arrived back at the shelter and the meat and broth had cooked, and he ate quickly, the flies had come when he glutted the rabbit, and they stayed for dinner while he ate. He brushed them away as he ate the meat from the bones and drank the broth, the full quart. They followed him as he went back to the lake to clean the pot, and he only left him where there wasn't a small of food anywhere in this area. He stacked wood for the night fire and made his bed by restacking the mattress of pine boughs and unrolling the sleeping bags and foam pad. And here he got another warning that he ignored. When he slid into the sleeping bag and turned so that he felt the heat from the fire on his face coming through the opening, it did not feel uncomfortable. He snuggled down in the bag and felt glad for its warmth, and thought that this was the first time he felt glad for heat this season, that it was growing cooler. Something had included him. He closed his eyes and went to sleep like a baby. Thank you all for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, comment, favorite, share. That is it for chapter 1. I want you guys to leave in the comment if you guys are watching the premiere, which I'm hoping 1 out of the 700 and some people watching this video will finally watch this premiere and actually comment what their favorite part of this book chapter was. There's going to be brand new chapters every day, and we have one more book to introduce tonight, which is we're reading a book called Freak the Mighty. And yeah, so anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know down in the comments what books you guys want me to read down in the comments, and I will read it. Yes, it will be any type. If it's like some like made up book, like some like weird inappropriate name for a book, yes, I'll do it just for you guys, because I can't thank you guys enough for how many supporters I have. I'm so thankful for all of y'all. I want to say thank you so much for watching today's video, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Jesus Pablo, which is a YouTuber. His name is Jesus Pablo. Jesus Pablo is a YouTuber, one of my subscribers, actually, and I really do like his YouTube channel. Another shout out goes to, all the shout outs are actually in the description. So all you need to do is go down in the description and check out the shout outs I have listed in the description. And those are all the people that got shouted out in today's video. If you guys want to get shouted out, all you have to do is it has to be a nice comment about me down in the chat, or maybe not about me, just about anything in general, about what you like about my video. Just a comment in the description, something nice, something positive, and I will shout you guys out in the next video of the next reading video. You'll be shouted out down in the description, and the only part about that is it will only be a shout out in the reading videos, and that is all. So thank you for watching today's video once again. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.